AITA for not letting my sister-in-law bring her kids to my wedding. So, a bit of backstory here. I'm getting married to my fiancée, Emily, in a few months. We're both in our early 30s, and we've been together for about 5 years. We met through mutual friends, and everything has been great since. We're having a relatively small wedding, around 100 people. It's at a venue we've been dreaming about for years, and we want it to be perfect. Emily and I both agreed that we didn't want children at our wedding. We've both been to weddings where kids were present, and while some parents were respectful, others were disruptive. We figured we'd avoid the whole issue and have an adults-only wedding where we can relax, enjoy the party, and not have to worry about kids running around or crying during the ceremony. We sent out the invitations about 2 months ago. Most of our friends and family were fine with it. However, my sister-in-law, Kate, absolutely lost it. Kate is married to my brother, James, and they have 3 kids. The oldest is 8, and the youngest is 3. Kate is someone who takes things personally, and she's very vocal when she feels slighted. So, when she received the invitation with a no kids note, she was furious. She called me right away and demanded an explanation. I explained to her that it wasn't about her kids specifically. It's just that we wanted an adult atmosphere, and I didn't want to deal with any disruptions. I also mentioned that there were plenty of other family events where the kids would be welcome, and this was just one occasion we wanted to have for ourselves. She didn't take that well. She started saying that it was unfair and selfish to not let her kids come, especially since they were close family. She mentioned that she had already paid for a babysitter for the event and that she shouldn't have to do that just to attend a family wedding. She said that Emily and I were being inconsiderate and that we were causing unnecessary stress for her and James. I explained that I understood her frustration, but the decision was final. I didn't want to get into a back and forth over it. She continued to complain, saying she couldn't understand why we wouldn't make an exception for her children, but I held my ground. That's when she went a step further and said that she might not attend if the kids weren't allowed. I told her that was her choice, but that the wedding would go on without her if that was the case. She then went quiet for a minute and said, "Fine, I'll go without the kids, but this is really going to ruin everything. I hope you're okay with causing this much drama." Fast forward to last weekend. I get a call from my mom, who's upset. Apparently, Kate had been telling other family members that I was being a terrible aunt and that I was making her choose between her kids and her family. She said I was being too rigid and infantile about the whole thing. My mom told me that I needed to think about the bigger picture and that I shouldn't be so selfish when it came to family matters. I tried to explain to my mom that it wasn't about me being selfish, but rather about us wanting a specific kind of wedding atmosphere. She wasn't having it. She said that my sister-in-law's reaction was understandable and that I should be more flexible. At this point, Emily and I are both feeling incredibly stressed. This wedding, which was supposed to be about us and our love, is now turning into a family drama. Kate isn't speaking to me anymore, and she's been venting to my brother, which has only added to the tension. She's also been telling people in our extended family that I'm a monster for not letting her kids come to the wedding. My brother, James, has tried to stay out of it, but I can tell he's siding with his wife. He's mentioned that family is important and that I should reconsider the guest list, but I've already explained how I feel about it. Now, I'm at a point where I'm questioning whether I'm being unreasonable. I don't want to compromise on the no kids rule, but at the same time, I don't want to ruin family relationships over this. I get that Kate is upset, but it feels like she's making this way more dramatic than it needs to be. Emily and I have both talked about it, and we're firm in our decision to have an adults-only wedding. We feel that it's our day, and we should be able to set the tone and the rules for it. I also understand that weddings can be a sensitive time for families, but I feel like Kate's reaction is over the top. I'm just not sure if I'm being too rigid or if I'm right to hold my ground. So, AITA for sticking to the no kids rule and not making an exception for my sister-in-law. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to hit like and subscribe to the channel. Your support means a lot and motivates me to create even more amazing content just for you. Make sure to turn on notifications so you'll never miss out on a new video. I'm curious, when do you usually watch my videos? While working, studying, or just relaxing? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you so much for your support, It truly helps the channel grow. AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding after she chose her ex over me. So, some backstory. I, 28M, have an older sister, Jessica, 31F, who's been in a pretty on-again, off-again relationship with this guy, Mike, 34M, for years. Their relationship has been rocky for as long as I can remember. They've broken up and gotten back together multiple times. Each time it seems like Mike has either done something that hurts her, or they've just grown apart for a while, only to get back together as if nothing happened. At some point, about 2 years ago, they broke up again, but this time it was different. It wasn't just a normal breakup. Mike had cheated on her. Jessica found out, and she was devastated. She called him out, they argued, and they broke up for good, or so she thought. That's when I, as her younger brother, did what I thought was the right thing. I stood by her. I helped her get through that time, even though she was insisting she was fine at first. She started therapy, started working on herself, and for a while, she was in a good place. I was proud of her for moving on, for being strong and independent. However, a few months later, she started talking to Mike again. I thought it was a bad idea, but I kept my mouth shut, thinking maybe they would work through their issues on their own. A little while after that, she and Mike got back together. When I found out, I didn't even try to hide my feelings. I told her I didn't think it was a good idea and that I was worried she was going to get hurt again. She got defensive and we argued. It was clear to me that she wasn't going to listen, so I backed off. Fast forward to now, Jessica and Mike are engaged and they're planning a wedding. She sent me an invitation, and at first, I was happy for her. But then I noticed something strange. The more she talked about the wedding plans, the more it felt like Mike's presence overshadowed everything. I tried to ignore my gut feeling, but when she made some comments about how important it was that Mike's family be involved in everything, it hit me like a ton of bricks. Mike's family had always been nice to me, but they weren't the ones I was concerned about. It was Mike and the way he treated my sister. I felt like Jessica was forgetting everything that had happened. We had another conversation about the wedding last week, and I could feel the tension building. I didn't want to come off as unsupportive, but I had to ask her straight up, "Do you really think marrying him is a good idea?" She was furious. She accused me of being a terrible brother, of not supporting her happiness, and of not caring about her future. She said she had forgiven him, and I should too. I tried to explain that forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting and that I wasn't just going to pretend everything was fine when I knew Mike hadn't really changed. It was clear she wasn't hearing me, and I started to feel like I was talking to a wall. The next day, I got a call from Jessica's fiancé, Mike. He was livid and told me that I needed to back off and stop poisoning Jessica's mind with my negativity. He told me if I wasn't going to support their wedding, then maybe I shouldn't be at it at all. He said it was unfair that I was making Jessica choose between him and me. I was honestly shocked. I told him that I wasn't trying to make her choose. I just wanted her to see things clearly before she made a lifelong commitment to someone who had hurt her before. He didn't want to hear it, and the conversation ended with him saying he didn't need my approval. After that call, I was seriously considering whether I should even go to the wedding. I'm not sure if I was more angry at Mike for trying to control the situation or at Jessica for completely ignoring my concerns. I talked it over with a couple of my friends, and while some of them thought I should go for the sake of family unity, others agreed that my feelings were valid and I shouldn't just ignore my gut. So now I'm at a crossroads. Jessica sent me a message saying she hoped I'd change my mind and that she wanted me there, but it still didn't sit right with me. I told her I couldn't come if she was marrying Mike because I couldn't condone it. She was heartbroken, saying I was taking this too far and that I was hurting her. She even said she felt like I didn't care about her happiness anymore. That really stung, but I still feel like I'm doing the right thing by staying true to myself. Am I being unreasonable? AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding because of her decision to marry someone I don't think she should? Edit. A couple of people have asked for clarification about my relationship with Mike. To be clear, I've never had issues with Mike as a person outside of his relationship with my sister. He's always been polite and respectful to me, but I've never been close with him. My issue is with the way he treated Jessica in the past, especially the cheating, and the way it seems like she's disregarding her own well-being for the sake of this relationship. I get that people can change, but it feels like she's giving him a pass when he hasn't done the work to earn that trust back. It's hard to sit back and watch, especially when I'm just trying to look out for her. AITA for telling my sister she can't bring her kids to my wedding. So here's the situation. I, 29F, am getting married to my fiancée, 30M, in a few months. The planning has been stressful, but I'm really excited about it. I've always dreamed of a smaller, more intimate wedding, and my fiancé agrees with me. We've decided to keep the guest list relatively small, with only close family and friends. I come from a big family, and while I love them all, it's always been a bit chaotic when we all get together. One person's kid is always crying, another is throwing a tantrum, and the overall vibe tends to be more hectic than enjoyable. My fiancé comes from a much smaller, quieter family, and he's not used to the big, loud gatherings that my family often has. We both agreed that we wanted a peaceful wedding day with minimal distractions, and that meant no kids under 12. This brings me to my sister, Lily, 32F. She has two young kids, Zoe, 4F, and Max, 6M, and they're adorable, but they're also a handful. To be completely honest, I've never been the biggest fan of kids, and while I understand it's my sister's responsibility to raise them, I just don't feel comfortable with the idea of them running around at my wedding. It's nothing personal, but I've been to a few weddings where kids were allowed, and they really took away from the atmosphere I was hoping to create. My fiancé feels the same way. He's not used to children's chaos either, and we both agree that it would be a lot better for everyone involved if there were no kids at our wedding. I was upfront with Lily about our decision. I told her that while I love her kids, and I know she's an amazing mom, we've decided that the wedding is going to be for adults only. I explained that it's nothing personal, but we really want to have a calm, enjoyable day, and that includes keeping the guest list to just adults. Lily didn't take it well at all. She immediately got upset and started telling me that I was being unfair, that it was her day too, and that she's part of the family and should be able to bring her children. She said she couldn't imagine leaving her kids with a sitter all day, especially because she's very attached to them, and that I was being selfish for not considering her feelings. I told her I understood her point, but I reiterated that this was my wedding, and I was just trying to create the best environment for it. I even offered to help her find a sitter for the kids, but she shot that down, saying it would be too much to ask, and that she didn't feel comfortable leaving them with someone else for that long. The conversation got pretty heated, and eventually, she told me that if she couldn't bring her kids, she just wouldn't come to the wedding. That stung, but I wasn't about to back down. My wedding day is one of the most important days of my life, and I don't want to compromise on the kind of experience I want to have. Plus, I know if I let her bring the kids, it could open the door for other family members to ask if they can bring their kids too, and I don't want the wedding to end up being a huge kid-filled circus. Since then, Lily has been very distant with me. We used to talk pretty regularly, but now she's been ignoring my texts and hasn't responded to my calls. Our parents have also gotten involved, try to mediate the situation. They've been trying to convince me that I should just let it go and let Lily bring her kids, arguing that family is important and I shouldn't let a small issue like this ruin my relationship with my sister. They've said that I'll regret not having her at the wedding, but I still don't think it's worth it to compromise on something so significant to me. I've also talked to a few of my other family members about the situation, and while some understand my reasoning, others think I'm being too rigid and need to be more flexible. They say that weddings are about family and that I shouldn't make it such a big deal, especially since it's just two kids. Now, I'm feeling really conflicted. I don't want to lose my sister, but I also don't want to let this go. I've tried to be as understanding as possible, but it seems like my sister isn't willing to meet me halfway. I can't help but feel like she's being a little dramatic about it all, especially since I've given her several alternatives to make things work. So, AITA for telling my sister she can't bring her kids to my wedding. I know she's hurt, but I just don't think I should have to compromise on something that's supposed to be one of the most important days of my life. AITA for telling my sister she can't name her daughter after my late mom because she never got along with her. I, 28M, have a sister, Sarah, 31F, who recently announced that she was pregnant with her first child. We were all thrilled for her, of course, but things got a little complicated when she revealed that she wanted to name her daughter after our late mom, Mary. Now, this might sound like a sweet gesture, but the issue is that Sarah and our mom never had a good relationship. Mom and Sarah clashed a lot throughout their lives. Mom was a bit of a perfectionist, and Sarah often felt like she could never meet her expectations. There were years of arguing, hurt feelings, and unresolved tension. Sarah moved out of the house as soon as she turned 18 and didn't keep much contact with Mom after that. When Mom passed away 2 years ago, Sarah barely attended the funeral. She didn't seem to feel any real grief, and she definitely never spoke about her in a positive light. Now that Sarah is pregnant and talking about naming her baby after Mom, I was honestly taken aback. I don't know how to explain it, but it felt disingenuous. It felt like she was trying to capitalize on the fact that Mom's name is still special to our family, even though she had no emotional connection to her whatsoever. I get that naming a child after a family member can be meaningful, but this felt like it was more about the symbolism than anything real. Sarah had always been very vocal about how much she disliked Mom, and now she wanted to name her daughter after her. It didn't sit right with me. So, a few days ago, I sat down with Sarah and told her that I didn't think it was a good idea to name her daughter after Mom. I try to be as respectful as possible, but I couldn't hide the fact that I was uncomfortable with it. I told her that it seemed unfair to Mom's memory, especially considering the relationship they had. I also told her it felt like she was trying to claim something that wasn't hers to claim. I know it's not my place to decide what she names her child, but it was honestly bothering me a lot. Sarah got really upset. She said I was being petty and that I didn't get to dictate what she does. She said it's her daughter and her choice, and I had no right to try to prevent her from naming the baby whatever she wanted. She told me I was overthinking things and that I was being too emotionally attached to the past. But I honestly don't think I'm wrong. It just feels disrespectful to me, and I can't shake the feeling that she's doing this for the wrong reasons. It's almost like she wants to rewrite history and pretend everything was fine between her and Mom when it really wasn't. A lot of my friends and family have been divided on this. Some of them agree with me, saying that it's weird for Sarah to want to name her baby after someone she always had issues with. Others say that I'm being too harsh and that it's her decision to make, and I should just let it go. I get that I don't have a say in how she names her child, but I can't help feeling like I've been put in an awkward position. I've been trying to stay calm and give her space to think about it, but she hasn't really spoken to me since our conversation. I feel guilty for bringing it up, but I also don't want her to do something that feels inauthentic. I don't want to seem like I'm just being bitter about the past, but it feels like a slap in the face to me and to our Mom's memory. So, AITA for telling my sister she can't name her daughter after Mom? Should I have just kept my mouth shut and let her make this decision without saying anything? AITA for refusing to help my sister pay for her wedding because of her past actions? So this all started a few months ago when my sister, let's call her Kate, got engaged. Kate and I have never been the closest. We grew up in the same house, but there's always been a bit of a distance between us, mainly due to her treatment of me growing up. I don't want to air all the dirty laundry, but let's just say that she was always the golden child. She was the one who got all the attention, the one who got praise for doing the bare minimum, and she could do no wrong in our parents' eyes. Meanwhile, I was the difficult one, the one who could never quite live up to her standard. We had a rocky relationship from the start. Anyway, fast forward to a few months ago. Kate got engaged, and, as expected, she started planning her wedding immediately. She's always dreamed of having a huge, extravagant wedding, and of course my parents were all in for it. I was kind of just there, going along with the flow. I've always felt like I'm not as important to her, so when she started talking about her wedding and how much it was going to cost, I figured I wouldn't be involved much. About a month ago, Kate sat me down and asked me to be her maid of honor. It was kind of a surprise because, as I mentioned, we've never been that close. I don't think I've ever been her first choice for anything, so this felt a little out of nowhere. But I said yes, mostly because I didn't want to cause drama or hurt her feelings. Here's where things started to go off the rails. A couple of weeks after she asked me to be her maid of honor, she sat me down again to talk about the wedding planning. She started going over all the details and then casually mentioned how much everything was going to cost. And by casually, I mean she was very much not concerned about how much money was involved. She talked about a 5-figure budget for her dress alone, a luxury venue that costs an arm and a leg, and all these other expensive details that just seemed unnecessary. She mentioned that she was going to have to ask some of her family members for help paying for things, and that's when I got a bit uncomfortable. She asked me to help cover some of the costs. She said that since I was her maid of honor, I should step up and help contribute. Now, at first, I thought she meant something along the lines of helping with the bridal shower or covering the cost of travel, which seemed reasonable. But no, she was asking me to contribute to her multi-thousand-dollar wedding costs. I immediately said that I didn't think I could afford that, especially considering that I had my own bills and responsibilities to take care of. I'm not exactly rolling in money, and I'd already made it clear that I didn't have a ton of extra cash lying around. But Kate didn't take that well. She told me that if I really cared about her, I'd make it work. She said I was being selfish for not helping out more. I tried explaining that I wasn't refusing to help because I didn't want to, but that I simply couldn't afford it. But she didn't seem to care. She just kept saying that family helps family, and that I should be willing to sacrifice for a big day. At that point, I got really upset. I've always been the one to help out when she's needed something in the past, whether it was helping her move or giving her money when she was short. But this felt different. This wasn't about helping her out in a time of need. This was about her demanding that I contribute to her wedding because she felt entitled to it. And honestly, it just didn't sit right with me. So I said no. I told her I wasn't going to contribute any money to her wedding. I made it clear that I'd still be there for her on the day, helping out in any other way I could, but that I couldn't financially help her with the wedding. She got so mad. She started saying things like, "I knew you weren't really there for me," and "I can't believe you're letting money get in the way of your relationship with me." She told me that she couldn't believe I was being so selfish and that she was disappointed in me. That really hurt. I tried to explain again that it wasn't about not wanting to help her. It was about not being able to afford to do so. But she wasn't hearing it. I didn't want to escalate things, but I also wasn't willing to give in. After that conversation, we barely spoke. I felt like I was in a no-win situation. If I gave her the money, I'd be financially strained and resentful. If I didn't give her the money, I'd lose her as a sister. She made it clear that if I wasn't willing to help, she didn't want me to be part of the wedding in any way. A few days later, she told me that I was no longer the maid of honor. She said she'd found someone else to fill the role, someone who was willing to put in the effort and not be so selfish. That stung, but honestly, part of me was relieved. I didn't feel like I could live up to her expectations anyway, and the thought of being responsible for so much when I already had my own stress was overwhelming. Now, my parents are really upset with me. They keep telling me I need to apologize to Kate and make things right because it's her special day. But I just don't think I did anything wrong. I'm willing to be there for her, but I can't afford to give her thousands of dollars. So, AITA for refusing to help my sister pay for her wedding. AITA for not letting my sister's husband stay at my house after they had an argument. I, 28F, have an older sister, Sarah, 33F, who is married to her husband, John, 34M. They've been married for about 5 years now, and like any married couple, they have their ups and downs. They live about 30 minutes away from me, so we're not super close geographically, but we see each other pretty regularly. My family's pretty tight-knit, and even though my sister and I have had our differences over the years, I do try to be there for her when she needs it. Recently, Sarah and John got into a pretty intense argument. It was one of those we're not talking to each other situations, and Sarah called me in tears, asking if she could come over and stay at my house for a while. She said she needed some space from John because the argument had gotten really heated, and she didn't want to go back to their house and deal with him right then. Now, I've always known that Sarah and John have their issues, but I never really wanted to get involved. I've tried to stay out of their relationship drama because I feel it's not my place. But when she called, I could tell she was upset, so I told her she could stay at my place for a few days. I was a bit hesitant because I live in a small apartment and I don't have a lot of extra space. But she's my sister, and I figured I could make it work for a short while. That night, she came over, and everything seemed fine at first. We talked for a bit, had dinner, and then just chilled. But the next morning, things started to get a little weird. Sarah was acting really distant. She'd barely talk to me, and when she did, it was all about how awful John was and how he was never going to change. I tried to listen, but it felt like she was just unloading all her frustrations onto me. I get it, relationships are tough, and sometimes you need a vent, but this felt different. She wasn't asking for advice or even comfort. She was just tearing John down in a way that felt like she was trying to make me hate him too. I didn't want to get involved in their relationship issues, but after a couple of days of this, it started to take a toll on me. Every conversation was about how horrible John was and how Sarah couldn't stand him anymore. By the third day, I started to feel drained. I was getting annoyed because I felt like she was using my house as a place to escape from her own issues instead of trying to resolve anything. On the fourth day, I reached my breaking point. Sarah was ranting again about how John had done this and that, and how she couldn't stand him anymore. She said she wasn't sure if she even wanted to stay married to him anymore. I tried to tell her that she needed to figure things out with him and not just vent about him to me. I told her that I wasn't her therapist and that it wasn't healthy for either of us to keep rehashing their relationship problems. That's when things took a turn. Sarah got defensive and started saying that I didn't care about her or her problems. She accused me of not being supportive and said I was just trying to push her out of my life because I didn't want to be involved. I told her that wasn't true and that I did care, but I also needed some boundaries. I told her I wasn't okay with her staying at my place indefinitely just to avoid confronting the issues in her marriage. At this point, she started crying, and I felt really bad. But she still wouldn't drop it. I told her that maybe it was time for her to go back home and try to work things out with John. She said she couldn't go back yet because she needed more time away from him to think, but I told her that staying at my house wasn't going to help. I said it wasn't fair to me, and that if she really wanted space from John, she needed to figure out how to handle it without using me as a crutch. I guess I could have handled it better, but after days of hearing nothing but negativity, I just didn't have the energy to keep being her emotional support. I felt like I was being dragged into something I didn't want to be part of. In the end, I told her it was probably best if she went back home. I gave her the option to stay one more night, but I made it clear that I wouldn't be comfortable letting her stay for an extended period. She ended up leaving that evening, and we've barely spoken since. I've tried reaching out to check on her, but she hasn't really responded. I know she's still mad at me, and I feel like our relationship is a little strained now. I'm just confused because I really wanted to be there for her, but felt like I was being dragged into a situation that was beyond my ability to handle. So, AITA for telling my sister she couldn't stay at my house anymore after a few days of emotional venting. I know she was upset, but I feel like I drew a healthy boundary. Still, I wonder if I should have just sucked it up and let her stay longer. Would love to hear your thoughts. AITA for refusing to let my parents come to my wedding after they made demands about my dress. So I, 28F, am getting married to my amazing fiancé, 30M. Let's call him Adam. We've been together for 6 years, and everything is going great. Adam proposed last summer, and we've been planning the wedding for the past 8 months. We decided to keep things small and intimate with only close family and friends. We chose a beautiful venue in the countryside, and I found a dress I absolutely love. It's not the typical traditional wedding gown. It's more modern, a bit more edgy, but still very bridal. Think a sleek satin gown with a thigh-high slit and a plunging neckline. I feel amazing in it, and it really suits my personality. Now, here's where the issue comes in. My parents, who I love dearly, have always been a bit old-fashioned. They've always had strong opinions on how things should be done, and that includes my wedding. They've been talking about the wedding nonstop since Adam proposed, and I've had to turn down several suggestions and requests, mostly about traditions they want to incorporate. But I've let some things slide because, well, they're my parents and I want to keep the peace. The issue that blew up recently started when I sent them a picture of my wedding dress. They didn't like it. In fact, they were pretty vocal about how inappropriate they thought it was. My mom especially didn't hold back. She said it was too revealing and that it wasn't respectable for a bride to wear something so daring. My dad chimed in, agreeing that it was too much and that people would talk. They both insisted that I either return the dress and find something more traditional or at the very least, get a jacket to cover up during the ceremony. I was taken aback. I thought they might not love the dress, but I didn't expect them to react so strongly. I tried to explain that this dress felt like me, and it made me feel beautiful and confident. I told them that the wedding was about me and Adam, not about what anyone else thought. But my parents didn't back down. My mom even suggested that I wouldn't be taken seriously as a bride if I wore something so unconventional. The conversation ended with me feeling frustrated, but agreeing to think about it. Over the next few days, the pressure kept building. My parents kept bringing it up, sending me links to appropriate dresses and suggesting alterations to mine. Finally, after another heated conversation, they told me that if I insisted on wearing the dress, they wouldn't attend the wedding. They said it would be too embarrassing for them to see their daughter in something like that. I was devastated. The thought of my wedding day without my parents was unimaginable. But at the same time, I felt so hurt by their refusal to support me in something that was so important to me. I told them I wouldn't change my dress, and if they couldn't accept it, then they could choose not to come. I know that sounds harsh, but I felt like they were asking me to compromise who I was for their comfort. Since then, my parents have been cold with me. They sent a card saying they were disappointed in my decision, but they also said they would respect my choice. However, I haven't heard from them much since then, and it's been hard not to feel like they're just holding on to this grudge. Adam has been supportive of me, but he's also said he doesn't want to see me lose my family over this. He suggested to try to talk to them again, but I honestly don't think I can make them change their minds. Here's where I'm stuck. I know this is my wedding, and I should be able to wear whatever I want, but a part of me feels like I've taken this too far. They've been so invested in helping with the wedding planning, and I hate that I've hurt them. At the same time, I don't want to give up my dress, and I don't think I should have to hide it just to avoid making them uncomfortable. So, AITA for refusing to change my dress and telling my parents they can't come to my wedding if they don't like it. AITA for refusing to pay for my sister's wedding because she made my wedding all about her. 29F, got married about 6 months ago. It was a small, intimate wedding with close friends and family. I've always been a bit low-key, so my wedding wasn't extravagant, but I put a lot of effort into making it special for me and my husband, 32M. I got a sister, Sarah, 26F, who has always been, well, a lot. She's not a bad person, but she has a way of making everything about her. It's always been like this, and I've just learned to deal with it over the years. Before my wedding, Sarah was engaged and planning her own wedding. She started talking about her wedding plans about a year before mine. She went on and on about all the things she was planning and how grand it was going to be. I didn't mind too much. I was happy for her, and I knew how much it meant to her. But as my wedding day got closer, I started noticing that she was subtly making comments about how my wedding would pale in comparison to hers. She would make little jokes about how my low-key wedding wouldn't be nearly as impressive as the big bash she was going to throw. A few weeks before my wedding, Sarah pulled me aside and told me that she would be wearing a stunning dress to my wedding and that it would definitely get more attention than mine. I didn't think too much of it, but it did bother me a bit. It was the first time I really felt like she was trying to overshadow me. She'd always been the more dramatic one in the family, and it seemed like she was pushing the boundaries even more this time. On the day of my wedding, Sarah did indeed wear a show-stopping dress, bright red, very flashy, and very much designed to turn heads. She kept making sure people noticed her too. She would interrupt conversations, make loud remarks, and would constantly position herself in the center of every photo. I try not to let it get to me, but it did. During the reception, my husband and I were trying to have a quiet moment together, but Sarah came over, plopped herself down next to us, and started talking about her own wedding plans. She even mentioned how much she was spending on her venue and how I should take notes because mine would look so much more basic in comparison. To be honest, it really felt like my wedding wasn't about me at all. The whole thing just turned into a platform for her to talk about her upcoming wedding, and she barely acknowledged the fact that it was MY's special day. I tried to be gracious, but I couldn't help feeling frustrated. Fast forward to a few months later, Sarah's wedding happened. She had this huge, extravagant ceremony with a massive guest list, a luxury venue, and all the trimmings. She asked me to be a bridesmaid, and I agreed despite my lingering frustrations. During her wedding, I noticed that she went out of her way to make me feel small. She made comments about my appearance, and at one point, when the photographer was taking pictures, she made sure I was in the background of every shot. She even asked the photographer to take one without me in it when she wanted a solo picture with the other bridesmaids. I didn't say anything to her about it. I figured I could let it slide for the sake of family peace, even though I felt humiliated. At one point during the reception, she even went so far as to grab the mic and make a toast to herself, talking about how her wedding had been everything she dreamed of and how she couldn't wait to start her life with her new husband. Again, no mention of me, my wedding, or anything that might have made it seem like we were both experiencing milestones in our lives. Then came the request. A few weeks ago, Sarah called me and asked if I could help pay for her honeymoon. She explained that her wedding had gone way over budget, and she was asking family members for financial help. She specifically mentioned that she needed $5,000 to cover her honeymoon expenses. She was very sweet about it, but the request felt like a slap in the face. I've been hurt by how she treated me during my own wedding, and even during her own. I felt like she'd used me as a backdrop to her own spotlight, and now she was asking for money, expecting me to be there for her financially. I told her I wasn't comfortable contributing to her honeymoon fund, and she immediately became defensive. She said that I should be happy to support her, especially since I was married and didn't need all that extra attention anymore. She said I was being petty and that I should put the past behind me and focus on what's important. I tried to explain that I didn't feel comfortable giving her money after how I'd been treated, but she just accused me of holding a grudge and ruining her happiness. Our parents have now gotten involved, and they're upset with me for being so cold and selfish. They say I should let it go and help her out, but I can't help feeling like my boundaries were crossed. She made my wedding all about her, and now expects me to finance her honeymoon? I don't know if I'm being too harsh, but I just don't feel like I owe her anything. So, AITA for refusing to pay for my sister's honeymoon after everything that happened with my wedding. AITA for refusing to attend my best friend's wedding because she didn't invite my boyfriend. So, I, 26F, have been best friends with Sarah, 27F, since high school. We've always been super close, and for the most part, we've been through everything together. Breakups, drama, and huge milestones in life. Our friendship has been solid, and I always thought we'd be there for each other through everything. About a year ago, Sarah got engaged to her now fiancé, Chris, 29M. I was so happy for her, and, of course, I was one of the first people she called when she got the ring. We've talked about her wedding a lot over the last few months, and I was thrilled to be a part of it. However, there's a catch. I've been dating Ethan, 28M, for about a year now. We met through mutual friends, and things have been going really well. We're at that stage in the relationship where things feel solid, and I genuinely love him. He's kind, funny, and respectful, and we just get each other. We've been hanging out as a couple with my close friends, and they've gotten to know him too. Everyone loves him, including Sarah and Chris. But when the wedding invitations went out, I was shocked. I got mine, but Ethan didn't. I initially thought it was an oversight, and I didn't think much of it. I asked Sarah about it casually, and she gave me a very vague answer like, "Oh, I've just been keeping the guest list small, you know how weddings are." But I'm not stupid. This wasn't about the guest list size. I know for a fact that Chris invited a bunch of people he barely knows, but somehow Ethan didn't make the cut. At first, I didn't want to cause drama, so I tried to brush it off. But as time went on, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. I asked Sarah directly, "Why didn't you invite Ethan? He's been to all of our get-togethers, and you've never had an issue with him before." She got a bit defensive, but after some back and forth, she finally admitted that she didn't want him at the wedding because he's not a significant part of your life yet. I was completely blindsided. To me, this was a huge slap in the face. It wasn't like we'd just started dating a few weeks ago. We'd been together for a year, and I considered him an important part of my life. To say that he wasn't significant enough for her wedding felt incredibly hurtful. I told Sarah that I was upset, and she apologized, saying she didn't mean it that way. She then tried to explain that the wedding was supposed to be an intimate, family-only event, and she didn't want to invite people she didn't feel connected to. I understood her wanting a small wedding, but it didn't sit right with me that Ethan wasn't even considered. I mulled it over for a couple of days, but ultimately, I decided I wasn't going to attend the wedding if Ethan wasn't invited. I didn't feel like I could go and celebrate this huge day with her when she was basically telling me that my boyfriend didn't matter enough to be there. I called Sarah to let her know my decision. I explained that I couldn't attend the wedding if Ethan wasn't invited because, to me, being a part of each other's lives means including the people who are important to us. I told her that I didn't expect her to change the guest list, but I couldn't pretend everything was fine if Ethan wasn't there. She immediately got upset and accused me of making it about myself and not respecting her wishes for her wedding. She said she understood it was hard, but it wasn't fair for me to make her day about my relationship issues. At this point, I was feeling pretty torn. I felt like I was standing up for my relationship, but I also didn't want to lose Sarah. I tried to explain that it wasn't about making it about me. It was about the fact that I didn't feel comfortable celebrating a major life event with someone who was deliberately excluding my partner. She didn't seem to understand and told me I was being dramatic and overreacting. We've barely spoken since that conversation. I've been getting texts from mutual friends, some of whom are supporting me, and others who are telling me I'm being unreasonable and that it's her wedding and I should respect her decision. I feel like I'm stuck between a rock and a hard place. On one hand, I get that it's her day, but on the other hand, it feels like she's putting our friendship on the back burner for the sake of a guest list. A few people have suggested I should just go without Ethan, but I can't bring myself to do that. I don't want to attend a wedding where I'm essentially being forced to pick between my best friend and my boyfriend, especially when it feels like Sarah is choosing a bunch of acquaintances over someone who is genuinely important to me. So now I'm wondering, AITA for refusing to go to my best friend's wedding because she didn't invite my boyfriend? AITA for getting upset when my parents asked me to skip my best friend's wedding to attend my cousin's? I, 28F, have a best friend, Emma, 28F, whom I've known since high school. We have been through thick and thin together, and I consider her one of the closest people in my life. So, when Emma got engaged last year, I was beyond excited. She asked me to be her maid of honor, and I, of course, said yes immediately. I started planning everything with her, from the bridal shower to the bachelorette party, and I've been there every step of the way for her. Here's where the issue comes in. My cousin Lucy, 30F, also got engaged around the same time as Emma, and her wedding date happens to be the same day as Emma's. It's a huge coincidence, but the timing couldn't be worse. I've always been close to Lucy, but not nearly as close as I am to Emma. I've spent far more time with Emma over the years, and our friendship means the world to me. A couple of weeks ago, my parents called me to talk about the situation. They told me that they really wanted me to attend Lucy's wedding because family is important and that I should make sure I'm there to support her. I explained that I was already committed to Emma's wedding and that I couldn't be in two places at once. My parents were upset by this and said they understood, but it felt like they didn't really get it. They tried to guilt-trip me, saying things like, Lucy will be really disappointed if you don't come, and she's family, and family comes first. I told them I understood, but I still couldn't change my plans for Emma's big day. A few days later, my mom called me again, this time even more insistent. She said she spoke to Lucy and that Lucy was really hurt that I wouldn't be at her wedding. My mom said that Lucy felt like I was prioritizing my friendship over family, and that it would cause a rift between us if I didn't show up. I honestly didn't know how to respond to that. I know Lucy would be disappointed, but I couldn't just drop everything for her wedding when I'd already committed to being there for Emma, who is essentially a sister to me. I told my mom I wasn't going to change my mind and that I would be at Emma's wedding as planned. My mom then said something that really got to me. I guess I'll just have to explain to Lucy why you're not coming, and she'll have to understand. I'm not sure why, but that statement made me feel guilty. I never want to hurt Lucy's feelings, but I also feel like I'm being forced into a really uncomfortable situation. It feels like my parents are trying to make me choose between family and friendship, and I don't think I should have to choose. Since then, there's been tension between me and my parents. They keep reminding me how important family is, and it feels like they're subtly trying to manipulate me into going to Lucy's wedding. I've tried to stand my ground, but it's hard because they're so persistent, and I hate disappointing them. A few days ago, I ran into Lucy while I was out with some friends. She didn't bring up the wedding, but I could tell there was some awkwardness between us. We used to be really close, but now it feels like there's this unspoken tension. I feel bad, but at the same time, I know I can't just drop Emma for Lucy. I feel stuck in this situation. I know my family means well, and I understand that they want me to be there for Lucy, but I feel like my parents are overstepping by trying to guilt me into changing my plans. I've already made my commitment to Emma, and I don't think I should have to choose between her and Lucy. But at the same time, I can't help but feel like I'm letting my family down by not being at Lucy's wedding. So, AITA for refusing to go to my cousin's wedding and prioritizing my best friends instead? Hey friends, if you enjoy this content, don't forget to like the video and share your thoughts in the comments. We really want to know what you like and what could be improved. What do you think of the video? Are there any topics you'd like to see in future videos? Your feedback really helps us get better. Thanks for being with us. AITA for refusing to let my brother-in-law stay at my house after he disrespected my family. So this is a bit of a long story, but I'll try to make it as concise as possible. I, 28F, have a husband, 30M, named Ryan. We've been married for 4 years, and for the most part, we get along well with our families. His side of the family can be a bit tricky, though. His brother, Kyle, 33M, has always been a source of tension. He's a bit of a troublemaker, to put it lightly. He's also single, has a history of being disrespectful, and always seems to cause drama whenever he's around. That said, he's Ryan's brother, and we've always tried to be accommodating. A couple of months ago, Kyle called Ryan and asked if he could stay with us for a few weeks. Kyle had recently lost his job and had been having trouble finding a new one. He said he just needed a place to crash while he got back on his feet. We don't live in a huge house, but we have a guest room, so we agreed to let him stay. At first, everything seemed fine. He was polite when he first arrived, and we assumed that he was just going through a rough patch. But things started going downhill pretty quickly. First, Kyle started showing up late to family dinners. At first, it was just a couple of times, but soon it became a pattern. He'd show up around 9 or 10 p.m. when dinner had already been served and cleaned up. When we'd ask him where he'd been, he'd either make some vague excuse or say he was out looking for work. But he didn't seem to be doing much of that either, because he'd always be home during the day and would disappear in the evenings. Then there were the little comments that started to get under my skin. I'm a stay-at-home wife, and while I don't mind the arrangement, Kyle would occasionally make snarky remarks about it. One time, I was cleaning up after lunch when he said, "Must be nice to have all that free time." I didn't think much of it at first, but as it continued, it started to bother me. I tried to brush it off, but it felt like he was subtly implying that I wasn't doing anything productive. Meanwhile, Ryan was working from home during the day, and Kyle would often complain that it must be nice to have a job where you can just work from home. As the weeks went by, Kyle started to become more demanding. He'd leave his things all over the house, leave the lights on in the guest room, and sometimes even take food from the fridge without asking. It was small stuff, but it added up. We've always prided ourselves on being respectful guests when we stay with others, so it really bothered me that he wasn't showing the same courtesy. Ryan and I had a couple of discussions about it, and he agreed that Kyle was being a bit inconsiderate, but he also didn't want to rock the boat with his brother. I understood where he was coming from, but I was starting to feel uncomfortable in my own home. One night, things took a turn. Ryan and I had just finished dinner and were sitting on the couch watching TV. Kyle came into the living room, smelling like alcohol, and asked if we had any more of the leftover wine from dinner. We didn't, so I said no. He then proceeded to make a comment about how I was probably too cheap to buy more. I was honestly shocked. I calmly told him that I wasn't cheap, but we simply didn't have any wine left. Kyle then went off on this tirade about how it wasn't a big deal and that I was just being difficult. He started getting more and more aggressive with his words, and Ryan just sat there, not saying anything. At that point, I lost it. I told Kyle that he was being rude and disrespectful, and that I didn't appreciate his attitude. I also told him that he needed to start looking for a place to stay because I wasn't going to tolerate his behavior anymore. Kyle got angry and started yelling, saying I was overreacting and that I had no right to tell him what to do in his brother's house. Ryan didn't step in, and I could feel myself getting more and more frustrated. Eventually, Kyle stormed off to his room, and I sat there, fuming. The next day, Ryan and I had a huge argument about it. Ryan said that I had overreacted and that I should have just let it go. He said that Kyle was going through a tough time, and I shouldn't have added to the pressure. I tried to explain that I wasn't trying to add pressure, but I couldn't keep living with someone who treated me like that in my own home. Ryan said that I was being unreasonable and that I was making things harder for him with his brother. After that, I told Ryan that Kyle couldn't stay at our house anymore. I said that I wasn't comfortable with how things were going, and if Kyle was going to continue staying with us, he needed to start treating us with respect. Ryan didn't take this well, and he got upset, saying I was being harsh. He argued that I should have just let Kyle stay for a little while longer so he could get back on his feet. Now, my in-laws are calling me and saying that I should have been more understanding and that I should have let Kyle stay until he found a job. They're upset with me for not being more accommodating, and they've even said that I'm making Ryan's life harder by putting him in this position. My own family is telling me that I did the right thing and that Kyle needed to learn some responsibility and respect. So, AITA for kicking my brother-in-law out of our house after he disrespected me and my family. AITA for refusing to attend my best friend's wedding after she disinvited my girlfriend. So, this has been a huge point of contention for me, and I really need some outside perspectives. A little background. I, 29M, have been best friends with Carla, 29F, since we were kids. We were always there for each other through thick and thin, and I genuinely considered her family. Her fiancé, Derek, 30M, is also a great guy, though we've only really gotten close in the past couple of years since he started dating Carla. About a year ago, Carla and Derek got engaged, and they immediately started planning their wedding. I was super excited for them. Honestly, I've never been so happy for anyone. We're both in the same friend group, so I assumed everything would go smoothly when it came to the wedding planning. Enter my girlfriend, Lily, 27F. We've been dating for almost a year, and things have been going great. She's sweet, funny, and we get along really well. Carla met Lily for the first time a few months ago, and things were fine at first. I didn't think it would be an issue. About a month ago, Carla calls me up and asks if I could meet her for coffee. I thought it was just a normal catch-up, but when we sat down, she looked pretty uncomfortable. She hesitated for a while before saying that she didn't want Lily to attend the wedding. I was floored. I asked her why, and she said that there was something off about Lily and that she didn't feel comfortable with her being there. When I pressed for more details, Carla said that Lily just didn't fit the vibe of the wedding. She went on about how Lily wasn't the right type of person to be part of such an intimate event and that she thought it would make things awkward. To say I was shocked would be an understatement. I've never heard Carla speak that way about anyone before. I asked her if she was serious, and she said she was, but that she hoped I would understand. I told her I didn't understand at all. I said that Lily was my girlfriend and that I wasn't going to come to the wedding if she wasn't allowed to be there. Carla immediately started apologizing, but I could tell she wasn't budging. She said it wasn't about me or my relationship, but about the wedding being a special day and wanting to avoid any drama. I asked her if she was suggesting that my relationship with Lily was going to cause drama, and she just said she was trying to avoid any unnecessary tensions. She tried to backtrack by saying I could bring Lily to the reception, but I would have to find another way to get her there because the ceremony itself would be very intimate. I told her that it wasn't about the reception, it was about being with the people I care about on that day, and if Lily wasn't welcome, then neither was I. I left the coffee shop pretty upset, and I haven't really talked to her since. I tried to reach out to her multiple times, but she has been distant. I sent a few texts explaining how hurt I was by her request, but she hasn't responded. Derek, the fiancé, hasn't said much either. I understand it's their wedding, but I feel like Carla's behavior is out of line. My relationship with Lily is important, and I don't want to make her feel like she's unimportant or not welcome in my life. At this point, I'm leaning towards just not attending the wedding at all. I understand it's her special day, but I feel like if I'm asked to choose between my best friend and my girlfriend, I need to prioritize my relationship. I don't want to go to a wedding where my partner is treated like she's not good enough to be there, and I really don't want to create an awkward situation for myself or for her. I've had a few people tell me I'm being dramatic and that I should just go to the wedding without Lily, but I really feel like if Carla cared about me as much as she claims to, she wouldn't put me in this situation. I've also been told that Carla might just be going through some pre-wedding stress and that maybe I'm overreacting. So, AITA for deciding not to attend my best friend's wedding because she disinvited my girlfriend? Edit. Some people have asked if there's more to this story. I don't think there's much more to say than what I've already explained. Carla has never had an issue with any of my past girlfriends before, and I've always been supportive of her relationships. Lily and I are both just regular people. There's no big reason why Carla would feel uncomfortable with her. I'm genuinely hurt that Carla feels this way about my relationship. I just don't get why she couldn't just be happy for me and let me bring my girlfriend to the wedding. I've always been there for her, so it feels pretty bad that she's willing to lose me over this. Edit 2. To clarify a few things based on the comments. I've spoken with Lily about the situation, and she feels uncomfortable, obviously. She's not pushing me to do anything, but I can tell it's bothering her too. She's more concerned about me losing my friendship with Carla over this, but I think I've made my decision. I'm not going to a wedding where I have to choose between my best friend and my girlfriend. Both are important to me, but I don't want to be part of a situation where I have to explain why one of them isn't good enough. Thanks for the input, everyone. AITA for refusing to let my sister move in with me after she left her husband. I, 28F, have an older sister, 34F, who has been married to her husband, Mark, 36M, for 10 years. Their relationship has always been a bit rocky. From the outside, it seemed like they had it all: a nice house, 2 kids, and a seemingly perfect life. But anyone who spent time with them could see that things were strained. Mark was always kind of controlling and overbearing, and my sister would often vent to me about how unhappy she was, but she always seemed to find a way to make things work, or at least pretend she was. Over the years, I tried to be there for her, offering support whenever she needed it, but I always encouraged her to either have open conversations with Mark or to really think about whether she was happy. She would listen, nod, but never actually take any of my advice. I had no real power to change her situation, but I always hoped she would find a way to break free if she was truly unhappy. Things came to a head about a month ago. My sister called me in the middle of the night, crying, telling me she was done with her marriage and that she needed to leave Mark. Apparently, they'd had a huge argument and things got physical. She didn't go into details, but she was absolutely adamant that she couldn't go back. She said she wanted to leave their house and asked if she could stay with me for a while until she figured out what to do next. At first, I was in shock. I hadn't heard anything about things getting this bad, but at the same time, I didn't want to turn her away. So, I told her she could stay with me, no problem, for as long as she needed. I live alone, and while my apartment isn't huge, I've got a spare bedroom, so it wasn't like I was offering her the couch. I thought it would be a temporary thing while she sorted out her life. I didn't hear from her for a few days after that call, and I honestly didn't think much of it. Then, out of nowhere, she showed up at my place with her kids, both of them, ages 7 and 9. I was a little taken aback since she never mentioned bringing them, and honestly, I didn't know what I was supposed to do with 2 kids in my already cramped apartment. I immediately told her that while I was more than happy to have her, I wasn't prepared for her kids to stay with me. My place just wasn't kid-friendly, and I didn't have the space or the resources for them. She got upset, but I thought I was being clear and reasonable. I suggested that she find a place for them to stay for a while, either with her parents or maybe with Mark's parents if they were willing to help. I even offered to help her find some childcare or a daycare center so that she could take care of things without the kids constantly underfoot. She, however, refused to do that. She said she couldn't leave them with anyone because she didn't trust Mark, and she wasn't comfortable with him being away from her during such a chaotic time. I tried to compromise. I told her that I'd be okay watching the kids for a few hours a day, but I couldn't have them full-time while she stayed with me. It just wasn't realistic, and I didn't have the patience for it. She was frustrated, but agreed, and the next day, she took the kids to her parents' house. For the next week, things seemed okay. My sister would visit me when she could, but it was clear that things were still tense between her and Mark. I kept trying to help her get back on her feet, giving her advice on what she could do next, whether it was seeing a lawyer, finding a place of her own, or figuring out a more stable living arrangement for the kids. Then, one evening, she came to me and said that she couldn't handle being away from the kids for much longer. She wanted them to come stay with her at my place. I explained once again that my apartment just wasn't suitable for them. I even tried to be as diplomatic as possible, saying things like, "I'm not prepared for this. I don't have the space or the supplies." But she wouldn't hear it. At this point, I was starting to feel overwhelmed. I had a job and my own life to manage, and I felt like she was expecting me to be the solution to her entire situation. I suggested again that she look into getting a temporary living arrangement for the kids, but she insisted that I wasn't being supportive enough and that if I were really there for her, I'd take care of everything. She even accused me of abandoning her and not being willing to help with her kids during a tough time. The next day, she sent me a message saying she was bringing the kids over and that I had to be okay with it. I lost it. I told her flat out that I couldn't do it. I was not ready for the responsibility of watching her kids 24/7, and I felt like she was being unfair by demanding that I take care of them when it wasn't what we had agreed on. I told her she couldn't stay with me if she was going to disregard my boundaries like that. She was shocked, and she asked me how I could be so heartless. I tried to explain myself again, but she said she couldn't believe I was prioritizing my own comfort over her family's needs. We haven't spoken much since that argument. She's been staying at a friend's place, and she's been sending me angry texts about how I'm not supportive. I feel guilty about turning her away, but I'm also frustrated by how entitled she's acting. I've done what I could to help, but I'm not willing to completely uproot my life just to accommodate her kids. So, AITA for refusing to let my sister and her kids move in with me after she left her husband. AITA for not allowing my sister-in-law to stay with us after she broke her engagement. So, I, 29F, am married to my husband, Nick, 32M, and we've been together for 5 years. We've been living in a small but comfortable house for the last 3. It's not big, but it's enough for the two of us, and we enjoy the privacy and peace it offers. Nick has a sister, Emma, 28F, who has been a part of our lives since we first got together. Emma and I aren't close, but we get along well enough. She's never been rude or disrespectful to me, but she tends to be a bit distant. Nick and I have always been supportive of her, and we've offered to help whenever she's needed it. A few months ago, Emma got engaged to her long-term boyfriend, Alex, 30M. We were happy for them. They seem to be in a good place, and Nick and I even hosted an engagement party for them. However, things took a turn recently. Emma and Alex broke up. To be honest, I don't know all the details, and I haven't asked because I didn't want to pry. From what Nick told me, Emma wasn't exactly happy about the breakup, and it was a pretty messy situation. Emma, of course, was devastated. So about a week after the breakup, Emma called Nick, asking if she could stay with us for a while to get away from everything. Nick immediately agreed without asking me. At first, I didn't think much of it, but when Nick told me about it, I was a little taken aback. Our house is small, and while I don't mind her visiting for a day or two, I wasn't really comfortable with her staying for an indefinite period of time. I told Nick that I wasn't sure that was a good idea, considering how our space is limited, and that I wasn't sure how well Emma and I would handle spending so much time together, especially when she's upset and emotionally charged. Nick got upset with me, saying that family comes first and that Emma needs us right now. He argued that I was being unreasonable because Emma needed a place to stay and we should help her out. I tried to explain that I didn't have an issue with helping her, but that it would be more manageable if we helped her find a temporary place to stay, or if it was just for a couple of days, not for an extended period. Nick insisted that she couldn't go to her parents' house because of family dynamics, though he didn't really elaborate on that. He said Emma didn't want to go there, and it would be more helpful if she stayed with us. I felt torn. On one hand, I didn't want to be the person who shuts down family, especially when someone is going through a tough time. On the other hand, I didn't think it was a great idea for us to offer her a free place to stay indefinitely, especially since I didn't even know how long she planned to stay or how that would affect our lives. I also thought about how this might change the dynamic between Nick and me. Having another person in the house, especially someone who might be emotionally charged, could create tension, and I didn't think that was fair to either of us. I told Nick that I wasn't comfortable with Emma staying indefinitely, and that I would prefer if she found another place to stay, maybe even something short-term, like a rental or an Airbnb. I said I was happy to help her look for options, but I didn't think it was reasonable for her to stay with us long-term. Nick was angry. He said I was being selfish and that I didn't understand how hard it was for Emma. He called me heartless and accused me of not caring about family. He said he couldn't believe I was putting our stupid little house above his sister's well-being. The argument escalated, and it ended with me telling him I wasn't going to compromise on this. I said that while I wanted to be supportive of Emma, I wasn't willing to let her stay with us for an indefinite amount of time, especially when we didn't have the space. Nick didn't speak to me for the rest of the night, And the next day, he went to his parents' house to talk to them about the situation. When he came back, he told me that they were on his side and they thought I was being unreasonable. His parents suggested I get over myself and just let Emma stay with us, saying it wasn't that big of a deal. I've been feeling pretty hurt and frustrated. I understand that Nick is trying to help his sister, but I don't feel like I'm being unreasonable here. We have a small house, and I have a right to feel comfortable in my own space. Plus, I feel like Nick is dismissing my feelings and just assuming I'll go along with whatever he wants. I'm also upset that his family is so quick to dismiss my perspective. It feels like I'm a bad guy for not automatically putting Emma's needs above my own comfort. To make things even more complicated, Emma has been texting me every day since the argument, telling me how sorry she is that we're fighting. She's been telling me how hard the breakup is for her and how she feels like she has no one to turn to. I get that she's going through a rough time, but I feel like she's trying to guilt-trip me into letting her stay. I haven't responded to any of her texts, and I feel like I'm stuck in the middle of this situation. I know it sounds harsh, but I just don't think it's fair to put myself in a position where I'm expected to give up my personal space to accommodate someone else, especially when it's not something I'm comfortable with. I love Nick, and I know he wants to help his sister, but I also think that he's overstepping in this situation. I feel like I'm the one who's being asked to make all the sacrifices, and I'm starting to question whether I'm wrong for standing my ground. So, AITA for refusing to let my sister-in-law stay with us after a breakup, even though my husband and his family think I'm being unreasonable. AITA for refusing to attend my best friend's wedding because she's marrying my ex. I, 29F, have been best friends with Mia, 29F, since high school. We've been through a lot together, from college stress to family drama to heartache, and we've always had each other's backs. She's one of those friends who's more like a sister, and I thought nothing could come between us until recently. About 2 years ago, Mia started dating my ex, Jake, 30M. Jake and I had been in a long-term relationship for almost 5 years before we broke up. The breakup wasn't exactly smooth, but it wasn't an awful, explosive thing either. It was more like a mutual drift apart. Neither of us was really happy, and we weren't in love anymore. We stayed on good terms and occasionally ran into each other at mutual events, but we didn't stay in contact after the breakup. When Mia first told me she was seeing Jake, I was honestly blindsided. I had no idea she was interested in him, and I didn't know how to feel about it. I wasn't angry at her, but I felt really uncomfortable. Jake and I had shared a lot of memories, and even though we were no longer together, I felt like she was treading on territory that was still a little sensitive for me. Mia insisted that I didn't have to worry about it and that she and Jake were just casually dating, but I couldn't shake the feeling of betrayal. At first, I kept my feelings to myself. I didn't want to ruin our friendship, but the more I thought about it, the more upset I became. Mia was one of the few people who knew everything about my past with Jake. We had talked about our relationship so many times, and now she was with him. To be clear, I wasn't in love with Jake anymore, but I still couldn't get past the idea of my best friend dating my ex. It felt like a violation of the space I had in my life. A few months into their relationship, Mia invited me to dinner with Jake and some other friends. I agreed to go, hoping I could get over the awkwardness. The dinner was incredibly uncomfortable. Mia and Jake were all over each other, laughing and making plans for the future. Meanwhile, I just sat there, picking at my food, trying to keep a neutral face. At one point, Jake leaned over and whispered something in Mia's ear, and I felt like I was going to lose it. I had to excuse myself to the bathroom to compose myself. When I came back, Mia could tell something was off. She asked me what was wrong, and I finally snapped. I told her I didn't think I could handle her being with Jake. I said it felt like a betrayal, even though I knew logically that it shouldn't, and that it was making me uncomfortable. Mia was hurt and upset, and she told me that I was being childish and that I needed to move on from the past. I apologized, but she seemed pretty angry. After that dinner, things between us were never the same. We still hung out, but the dynamic had shifted. I wasn't as open with her anymore, and she started to pull away a little too. Jake and Mia eventually became more serious, and I felt more and more isolated from the friendship that used to mean everything to me. She never once apologized for dating Jake or acknowledged how difficult it was for me. And I started to feel like I was just supposed to accept their relationship without any consideration for my feelings. A year later, Mia got engaged to Jake. I wasn't surprised, but I also wasn't thrilled. Mia invited me to be a bridesmaid, but I told her that I didn't feel comfortable being in the wedding party given the circumstances. She was upset, but I stood firm. She then asked me to attend the wedding as a guest, and I told her I wasn't sure if I could do that either. Now here's where things really started to get messy. Last week, Mia called me up and told me that Jake had told her he didn't want me at the wedding at all. He felt that it would be awkward for him and that I might cause problems. Mia was upset and said that if I didn't come to the wedding, it would be like I was cutting her out of my life. I told her I didn't feel comfortable going and that I didn't want to be around Jake at the wedding. Mia then accused me of being petty and holding on to old wounds and said I was ruining her big day. She told me that I needed to either get over it or stop pretending to be her friend. I tried to explain that this wasn't about Jake anymore. It was about how I felt disrespected by both of them. I didn't want to attend a wedding where I felt like the odd one out. It felt like they had taken something from me, and I couldn't just pretend that wasn't the case. Mia hasn't spoken to me much since that conversation. I feel terrible about it, but at the same time, I don't feel like I'm the one in the wrong here. I've always been supportive of her relationships in the past, and I don't think she has done the same for me. I know she's in love with Jake, but I can't help but feel like my feelings and boundaries have been completely disregarded. So, AITA for refusing to attend my best friend's wedding because she's marrying my ex? I feel like I've been pushed to the point where I need to choose my own mental health over the friendship, but I don't know if that makes me a bad person. AITA for refusing to let my brother stay with me after he got divorced and needs a place to live. I, 28F, have a brother, Jake, 30M, who's been a pretty big part of my life, even though we don't always get along. He's a decent guy, but he has always been a bit of a free spirit, maybe too much so at times. He's never been particularly responsible with his finances, and over the years, he's had a series of unstable relationships. His most recent marriage to his ex-wife, Sarah, 32F, was a pretty toxic one. From what I can tell, they both played their parts in it falling apart, but Jake has this habit of blaming everyone but himself when things go wrong. Recently, Jake and Sarah got divorced. Apparently, it was a messy breakup with a lot of back and forth arguing, and in the end, Sarah ended up getting the house. Jake was left with nothing but some clothes and a couple of bags of personal stuff. After the divorce, he came to me and asked if he could stay at my place temporarily while he got his life together. He said he'd been looking for apartments, but everything was too expensive, and he didn't want to move back in with our parents because the atmosphere there was too suffocating. His words, not mine. At first, I was sympathetic. I could tell he was feeling down about the divorce, and I knew he was going through a rough patch. I told him I'd think about it, but my gut told me that it might not be a good idea. I've had him crash with me a few times in the past, and it never went smoothly. He's not a very clean person, and he has a habit of overstepping boundaries. Still, I figured that maybe this time would be different, so I told him I'd let him stay for a few weeks just until he got things sorted out. The first few days were fine. He'd get up late, lounge around, and complain about his ex-wife and how everything was unfair. Honestly, I could understand him being upset, but I couldn't help feeling that he was using me as a sounding board instead of taking responsibility for his part in the failed relationship. He never really seemed to make any effort to get back on his feet. I kept hearing excuses about why he couldn't get an apartment yet or why his job was on the verge of firing him, which, when I asked around, turned out to be an exaggeration. His finances were in disarray, but instead of making moves to fix them, he was wallowing in self-pity and spending hours on the phone with friends or complaining on social media. It didn't take long before the little things started to bug me. He'd leave dirty dishes in the sink, use my stuff without asking, including my shampoo and my clothes, and leave the bathroom a mess. I come home from work to find him on the couch, watching TV and playing video games like he had all the time in the world. The worst part was that when I asked him to clean up or be more considerate, he'd just shrug it off and say he was going through a rough time and that I should understand. Every time I tried to have a serious conversation with him about his lack of effort or responsibility, he'd either brush me off or act like I was being too harsh. About a week into his stay, he started inviting friends over. These weren't people I knew very well, and I was uncomfortable with strangers hanging around my apartment. At first, they'd just come over to cheer him up, but it quickly became regular hangouts. There were loud conversations late at night, and one night, some of them even stayed over. I woke up to find one of his friends on my couch the next morning. Jake had told me that his friends were just here for a little while, but that didn't stop them from getting comfortable in my space. I was starting to feel like my apartment was being treated like a party house. I asked him again, more seriously this time, to be respectful and keep the guests to a minimum. Jake got defensive and told me that I was being unreasonable. He said I was being too uptight and that I should be happy he was finally getting back out there after his divorce. To be honest, I felt like I was being taken for granted, and it wasn't fair to me. I didn't want to sound like I was kicking him out when he was already struggling, but I also couldn't live like this. At that point, I had enough. I told Jake that it was time for him to find a place to stay. He was taken aback and started insisting that I was being selfish and unsupportive. He told me that I was turning my back on him when he needed me most, and that my refusal to let him stay longer showed that I didn't care about family. I tried to explain that it wasn't about not caring, but that I simply couldn't keep living with the chaos and disrespect. He left a few days later, but the tension between us hasn't gone away. Our relationship has been strained, and he's been giving me the cold shoulder whenever we talk. I know he's hurt, and maybe I could have been more empathetic, but I genuinely feel like he needs to learn how to handle his own problems and take responsibility for his actions. I'm all for supporting family, but I don't think I'm obligated to sacrifice my own peace of mind for his lack of effort. Now, I'm questioning if I did the right thing. Am I the asshole for refusing to let my brother stay with me longer? Should I have been more patient and supportive, or was I right to set boundaries? AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding because of the way she treated me? I, 29M, have a sister, Lana, 31F, who's getting married in a couple of months. I'll admit right off the bat that our relationship hasn't always been the best. Growing up, Lana was always the golden child. She was pretty, popular, and got everything she wanted, while I was more the quiet, nerdy kid who never really fit in. Our parents made it clear that she was the one they were most proud of, so I spent a lot of my childhood feeling invisible. We didn't fight much, but I didn't feel like I could ever live up to her. As we got older, Lana's superiority complex started to show in her interactions with me. She would often belittle me, especially in front of others, and act like I was a joke. If I tried to share something important with her, she'd change the subject to herself and make passive-aggressive comments about how I could never understand her life. Fast forward to a few years ago, and Lana became engaged to her now-fiancé, Dan, 33M. The engagement was, to be honest, a bit of a blur for me because I was dealing with some personal issues at the time. I just come out of a difficult breakup and have been focusing on my career, so I didn't really get involved in the wedding planning or anything. But then, a few months ago, Lana sent out the formal invitations. When I saw mine, I noticed something strange. There was a note at the bottom of the invite that said, "Formal attire required. No exceptions." I didn't think much of it at first. I'm not the type of person who makes a fuss over dress codes. But then, I remembered some of the things Lana had said to me in the past about my appearance. Growing up, she would always point out when I wore clothes she didn't think were cool enough or up to standard. Even as adults, I've overheard her making snide comments about how I don't take care of my looks like she does, or how I look like I'm always in a rush when I show up to family events. It's not that I'm completely indifferent to my appearance. I just don't have the same focus on it that she does. I decided to call her and ask what she meant by the formal attire note. I was genuinely confused and wanted to make sure I wasn't missing anything. Lana answered the phone, and when I asked, she went quiet for a second before saying, we just want everyone to look their best. You know how you could be casual? I'm just trying to make sure the wedding looks nice." I felt this weird mix of embarrassment and frustration. What does that even mean? What do you want me to wear? I asked. Something like a suit, she said, dismissing me. You don't want to show up in jeans or something, right? I tried to stay calm, but I felt my patience wearing thin. Lana, I don't wear jeans to weddings, and you know that. But seriously, you're making it sound like I'm going to embarrass you by just showing up. It feels like you're trying to tell me that I'm not good enough to be part of your perfect day. She didn't respond to that, so I hung up. After that call, I spent a lot of time thinking about my relationship with Lana. I realized I've spent years letting her treat me like a second-class citizen. I've never really called her out on her behavior, and every time she made comments about my appearance or life choices, I brushed it off, thinking it was just her being Lana. But now, as I reflected on everything, it felt like I had allowed her to walk all over me for far too long. I didn't want to go to her wedding just to be belittled in front of everyone. The whole thing felt fake to me. I knew I couldn't stomach being there and having her act like everything was fine while I was secretly uncomfortable with the way she treated me. It wasn't even about the wedding anymore. It was about how I was tired of being her punching bag in the family. I decided I wasn't going to attend. I sent her a text a few days later, explaining that I wouldn't be able to make it to the wedding. I didn't go into detail about everything that had been bothering me over the years, but I made it clear that I didn't feel comfortable being around her anymore, especially with the way she treated me. She responded almost immediately with a short message. "Okay, I understand. I guess I'll see you at the next family event." At that point, I didn't know what else to say. I wasn't expecting her to beg me to come, but the whole thing left me feeling drained. I didn't want to explain myself any further, especially when I knew she wouldn't take it seriously. So, I didn't respond. A few weeks later, I started getting messages from my parents and other relatives. My mom was upset and asked me why I wouldn't attend the wedding. I told her that I wasn't comfortable with how Lana had treated me for years, and I wasn't about to pretend everything was fine just for the sake of her wedding. My mom tried to convince me to reconsider, saying that family is family and I shouldn't let a few things ruin the day. I told her it wasn't a few things, it was years of treatment that I couldn't ignore anymore. Then my dad called and tried the same approach. He told me that weddings are special and that I'd regret not being there. I told him that I wasn't the one who needed to regret anything, and that Lana had made her choices over the years about how she treated me. He got quiet and then just said, "I hope you think about it." Now, a few days before the wedding, I'm feeling conflicted. Part of me feels like I'm doing the right thing by standing up for myself. But another part of me wonders if I'm being too harsh and overreacting. My family has always been about putting up with each other's flaws and not making waves. Maybe I should just go, even if it feels like I'm tolerating a lot. I've been questioning myself, wondering if I'm making the right decision. So, AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding because of the way she's treated me all these years? AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding after she told me I couldn't bring my boyfriend because he's too much of a distraction? So, this whole situation has been bothering me for a few weeks, and I honestly don't know if I'm in the wrong or not. So I'm coming to Reddit to get some outside opinions. I, 29F, have a sister, Jessica, 27F, who is getting married in a few months. I'm excited for her, I really am. She's been with her fiancé, Tom, 30M, for about 3 years, and they're both really nice people. The problem started when the wedding invitations went out. I've been with my boyfriend, Ben, 30M, for almost 2 years now. We have a great relationship, and we're very close. He's super supportive, funny, and he gets along with my family, including Jessica. So when I got my wedding invite, I assumed Ben would be included as my plus one, like he's been at every other wedding I've attended in the past 2 years. But when I reached out to Jessica to confirm the details, she told me something that completely caught me off guard. She said that Ben wasn't invited to the wedding. I was really confused and asked her why. She then told me that she didn't think Ben was appropriate for the event and that he would be a distraction to the atmosphere of the wedding. Now, this absolutely blindsided me. To be clear, Ben isn't rowdy or inappropriate. He's just a regular guy, respectful, well-mannered, and not someone who causes scenes. The only thing I could think of was that Ben has a bit of a sarcastic sense of humor and is the kind of person who makes jokes to lighten the mood in stressful situations. But I never thought that would be a problem at a wedding. I told Jessica that I didn't understand what she meant by him being a distraction and asked her to clarify. She explained that Ben's humor might not match the formal and serene vibe she wanted for her wedding. She went on to say that he might make people uncomfortable with his jokes, which would take attention away from her and Tom on their special day. She also said that the guest list was already tight, and she was trying to avoid unnecessary chaos. Honestly, I was kind of shocked. I tried to tell her that Ben had been to other weddings and never caused any problems, and that he wasn't even the type to steal attention or do anything inappropriate. She didn't budge and said that she had to make tough decisions about the guest list and that it was nothing personal against Ben, but that she wanted the day to be just right. At this point, I started getting frustrated. I told her I understood that she had a vision for her wedding, but that I wasn't comfortable coming without Ben. I explained that we're a couple and I didn't want to attend her wedding without him, especially after she made such a big deal about him being a distraction. It felt like she was putting conditions on me that I wasn't willing to accept. She got upset and accused me of being selfish for making her wedding about me and my relationship instead of celebrating her and Tom. She said I was overreacting and that I should be happy for her, even if that meant attending the wedding solo. She told me that if I couldn't respect her wishes, I didn't have to come at all. The conversation ended on a sour note, and I left feeling really hurt and confused. I talked to Ben about it, and he was completely understanding, telling me that he didn't want me to feel pressure to choose between him and my sister. He assured me that if I wanted to go without him, he would be fine with it. But honestly, I feel like this is bigger than just go to a wedding. I've been close with Jessica my whole life, and it feels like she's making a decision that's not only affecting me, but also pushing me to choose between her and my boyfriend for no good reason. A few days later, I told Jessica I would not be attending the wedding if Ben wasn't invited. She responded by saying that she was disappointed in me, that I should be able to support her even if I wasn't happy with the guest list, and that she didn't think we'd be able to have a healthy relationship if I kept putting Ben ahead of her. She said she didn't want someone at her wedding who didn't understand boundaries. Now, I'm stuck in this position where I feel like I'm being forced to choose between my sister and my boyfriend. I've been invited to other family events without Ben before, but this feels different. It's a huge milestone for her, and I feel like she's telling me that either I conform to her vision or I'm not welcome. But at the same time, I can't shake the feeling that she's being unreasonable by making such a big deal out of my boyfriend's personality. I've seen her invite people who are a lot more outspoken and disruptive than Ben, so it feels like she's singling him out for no good reason. I don't want to cause a rift with my sister, but I also don't think I should have to leave my boyfriend behind for the sake of her wedding. So, AITA for refusing to attend her wedding if Ben isn't invited? Edit, I didn't mention this in the original post, but Ben and Jessica do have a history of not always getting along perfectly. There was a minor disagreement between them early in our relationship, but it was resolved, and Ben has always been respectful toward her. I don't think that's the main issue here, though, since she's never brought it up as a reason. She has been clear that her concern is about his vibe at the wedding. Edit 2. Some of you have pointed out that this might be more about my sister's own insecurities than anything else, and I'm starting to think that could be true. There's a chance she's overthinking things and is nervous about how everything will go on the big day. I'm still not sure if it's fair to ask me to leave Ben out of it entirely, but I'll have a deeper conversation with her about it before making any final decisions. Thanks for the insights. AITA for not helping my friend with her wedding and causing a rift in our friendship. So I, 28F, have been friends with Maya, 29F, for almost 10 years now. We met in college and have been through thick and thin together. Maya and I always joked about our future weddings, but I always thought that, like me, she would prefer a small, intimate ceremony. That is, until she got engaged about a year ago. When Maya got engaged, she was over the moon, and I was genuinely so happy for her. She showed me her engagement ring, shared her excitement about the wedding plans, and, of course, immediately started telling me about her vision for the big day. I was a little surprised by how extravagant she was planning it to be. A destination wedding, a huge guest list, a 5-tier cake, expensive photographers, and a designer dress. It was all very extra. But, it's her day, so I didn't think much of it. Things took a bit of a turn when she asked me to be her maid of honor. I was absolutely honored and thrilled at first. I felt so special that she wanted me to be a part of her big day. But as the planning went on, things started to feel a bit off. The first red flag came when she asked me to pay for my own dress, which was fine, but then she insisted on a particular designer gown that cost $800, not including alterations. At the time, I had just moved into a new apartment and was still trying to get my finances in order. I didn't want to seem like I was being difficult, so I agreed figuring I could make it work. But when she also mentioned that she wanted all of the bridesmaids to pay for their own hair, makeup, and accessories, I started to feel uncomfortable. I didn't want to be the person to complain or rock the boat, so I didn't say anything at that point. Then came the bachelorette party planning. Maya went all out and decided to rent a villa in another state, booking an entire weekend for the event. Flights, accommodations, activities, meals, and everything else were on the tab of the bridesmaids. She even suggested that we all buy matching designer robes for the weekend, which were $200 each. I was starting to feel overwhelmed by the financial burden, but didn't want to ruin the vibe of the wedding planning by voicing concerns. At this point, I was getting anxious about my own financial situation. I really wanted to be there for Maya, but I was starting to feel like I couldn't keep up with the demands. Still, I kept my mouth shut and pushed forward, hoping things would level out. But then about 3 months before the wedding, Maya called me. She was super excited and started telling me about all these special roles she had planned for her bridal party. She said that she was thinking about giving me the honor of planning the bridal shower, which I thought was amazing. At first, I felt a huge sense of responsibility, but then I realized that this was yet another expense I would have to cover. The venue, food, decor, invitations, gifts for the guests, it was all going to fall on my shoulders. When I brought up the idea of asking other bridesmaids to pitch in, she quickly shot it down, saying it was my responsibility as maid of honor and that she wanted everything to be perfect. It felt like I had no choice but to say yes. A couple of weeks later, the stress really started getting to me. Between my regular job, the financial strain of all the wedding-related expenses, and the pressure to make everything perfect for Maya, I was struggling. I hadn't been able to enjoy the engagement process or even take the time to reflect on my own life and goals. Everything seemed to be revolving around Maya's wedding. I found myself resenting the whole thing. I began to have doubts about how much I was really willing to sacrifice for her big day. Finally, I hit a breaking point. A week before the wedding, I had to take an emergency trip to visit a sick relative. When I returned, I received a call from Maya. She was absolutely furious with me. Apparently, she had made several decisions about the wedding without consulting me, and I hadn't been there to help with finalizing details, which, according to her, was my responsibility as maid of honor. She said I was being selfish and unsupportive, and that I was letting her down on her most important day. This is when I decided to be honest with her. I told her that I was overwhelmed and didn't feel like I could keep up with everything, especially with all of the financial strain it was causing me. I told her that I didn't think I could be her maid of honor anymore. She was furious. She accused me of abandoning her at the worst possible time and said I was being unreasonable. I tried to explain that I loved her and wanted to be a part of her day, but I couldn't keep sacrificing my own mental health and finances for it. She didn't understand. The conversation ended with her saying that if I wasn't going to be her maid of honor, I might as well not come to the wedding at all. I ended up deciding not to go to the wedding. I sent her a heartfelt message apologizing for not being able to fulfill my role and explaining that I still loved her and wished her all the best, but I simply couldn't go through with it. Since then, she's barely spoken to me. She removed me from all her wedding-related social media posts and has told other mutual friends that I ruined her big day by backing out. Now, our entire friend group is divided. Some people think I was right to set boundaries and take care of myself, while others think I should have just sucked it up and been there for Maya, no matter what. I feel terrible, but I also don't know if I could have handled it differently without compromising my own well-being. So, AITA for not helping with my friend's wedding and ultimately backing out of being her maid of honor. Thank you for watching until the end. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss new videos. Also, leave a comment. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Your support and engagement mean a lot to me. See you in the next video.